Sarah Keane is the CEO of Swim Ireland, obviously heavily involved with the Olympic movement. Rena Buckley is an 18-time All-Ireland winner from Cork. Graham Shaw is the head coach of the Irish women's hockey team. And Jessica Harrington is a legendary horse trainer, but also an Olympian. Hiya. Anywhere, yeah. Not a bad turnout for Monday morning. And it's also clear from the various sports bodies working together and the various media companies sharing notes and talking to each other that this is something that clearly means a lot to people. We will have a question and answer session at the end of this. The throwable mic is here, so if we take your head off with it, apologies in advance. But one of the things that we want to do here is shift people's mindset about the cultural significance of women's sport. Rena, you've 18 All-Ireland medals. Have you ever been on a billboard? Have you ever been part of an ad campaign?
Obviously, I'm not good looking enough to be on the billboards. No, I didn't make a billboard. I don't think I will at this stage.
But it's interesting that your Cork team was this phenomenon and didn't really get the cultural recognition that it deserves. In retrospect, I think it's fair to say that.
Yeah, possibly. I suppose one thing we did achieve as a team was we won the RT Sport Team of the Year. And that was a really emotional thing for us because not that we felt we deserved it or anything like that, but to be recognised nationally, as a female Gaelic Games team, it was so special to us. But probably Clare won one All Ireland and they got it, Brilliant.
Jessica, in many respects, your story isn't a million miles away from Casey in that when you were starting out as a trainer, effectively you weren't really allowed to be a trainer. It was only in the 60s that women were first allowed to become trainers, and it was after that, when you start, there's still this kind of sense of, well, this is a man's game.
Very much so. I swear to God, when 30 years ago, when I started as a trainer, the men looked at me and said, well, she's got family, she's got a husband, she's got to look after them first. What's she doing here? You look at Rachel Blackmore, who's actually here this morning. She, up till yesterday, was leading jockey since May against all the Ruby Walshes, Barry Geraghty's, Robbie Parr, Tall Townend. She was the leading jockey in numbers of winners ridden this year. And that is an achievement. She is a leading jockey. She's not a leading women jockey, female jockey. We've got rid of that tag that it has to be female or male, where she's now being treated as an equal, which I think is an amazing step forward.
What else needs to happen, Jessica? What else? How else can we all improve on this?
I think just encourage, make sure it goes back to the thing as when I grew up, every role model that I had, either jockey or trainer, were men. I think now, at least there are jockeys out there, girls that can look up and say, Rachel Blackmore did that. Look what Katie Walsh has achieved. Look what Nina Carber has achieved. There are people there up there who have achieved, have become role models and will encourage people to do it. Hopefully, more women will become trainers because of what I've been lucky enough to achieve.
Cultural recognition piece was something that the hockey team achieved with 10 years of hard work and then overnight success in terms of the public's perception of it. In the middle of it, were you aware of what was happening? The fact that, the GAA crowds before the evening matches were in the pubs watching the hockey team right around the country?
No, not at all. Completely oblivious to the whole thing. I mean, we were over there living in a bubble, preparing for every game and debriefing every game and just trying to keep ourselves focused. So, oblivious to what was going on. And, I mean, my girls are... inspire me. They inspire me every day to do a good job, to be a better man. I think us men have a lot to answer for why women's sport is not in the media and in the public eye a little bit more. And I think it's of course it has to change. We need to give them the opportunity and the platform to succeed because when you get behind them, they can do incredible things. And I think that's. We've had a summer where you talk about sponsorship. We got a sponsor came in six weeks prior to the competition, and it's incredible even that the confidence and belief that gave them. Going into a World Cup, and when we empower them, we support them, they can do special things.
What does this look like when it's finished in terms of what you would like to see for the coverage of women's football and camogie?
Yeah, Yeah. I suppose I started playing inter-county in 2003, and I finished up last year in 2017. And the changes that occurred over that period is phenomenal. It's unrecognisable, to be honest. I suppose what I'd be really proud of is participation levels have jumped hugely, but we definitely need to work in terms of coverage. No, over the last 5 years, there's been big changes again. Ladies football in particular, everyone, acknowledges the success in terms of attendances. Coverage has improved hugely, visibility has improved, but there's still a gap there, and we still need to close that gap.
Jessica, when did you become comfortable, just being Jessica Harrington, horse trainer?
Took a good while. I started off 30 years ago. There was very little support in, go on, encouragement, go on, do it. Mostly it was, look, I suppose you can do it. There was that, I suppose you can do it, as opposed to you can do it.
What kept you going? Why did you keep going?
Why did I keep going? To prove that I was right and they were wrong. And I'm stubborn.
It definitely pays to be stubborn. What would you like to see racing do? So when you said there were no supports for you 30, 40 years ago, are there supports for the women coming through as trainers now that you feel like?
You still have to paddle your own canoe, because, you have to be taken for what you are. But, and again, it goes back to the culture thing in Ireland. This is a men's job. So then what are we doing it for? Because I remember when I first started training, the owners would ring up and they wanted to speak to my husband, Johnny. He hadn't a clue what was going on because he had another job. So, it was a cultural thing, and it still is a slight cultural thing. Women trainers, inverted commas.
I'm very excited for the future of Irish sport and for women in Irish sport. I mean, I was concerned, and I've said it before about a year or so ago, that, because there has been huge improvements, that there was a sense of, the job is done now. Sure, we've women CEOs and we have women at high performance doing a great job everywhere, and we've women coaches and we've all this sort of stuff, so the job is done. It's far from done. But what's exciting for me in the last year is that there's still a huge amount of energy. Look at the turnout this morning. As I said, so many people in this audience are doing so much already for women's sport. We now hopefully will have an aligned policy and strategy. We have look at what this 2020 campaign is doing and sponsorship behind it, and all the media, getting involved and saying they're going to back it. So I think we're at a government are doing the same, extra money into women's sport for 2019. So I think we're at a really good time. We just have to make sure we harness it and that we try and make sure everybody individually knows what they can do to contribute.
But it's a shift in culture is what we're looking for, and we're looking to. I think the shift in culture is happening. But we're looking to accelerate that, and I think investment is hugely important. We were talking about knocks that women get along the road, and I remember even, I suppose in my mind, I thought there was this huge shift after coming in women's sport. I remember last year, I was asked to present medals to a club team in West Cork. So the boys and girls had come together and they had won the under-14 championship in ladies football and the under-12s in boys. So they asked me to come down and present the medals. So I went along, and when I got down there on the night, the guy who asked me took me aside and he said, "Look, we're really sorry, but the GA team actually don't want you to present the boys with the medals." This was an under-12 boys team, So that was absolutely fine, They got some local guy to do it. He was absolutely mortified, he could hardly look at me. He was really embarrassed. But that's just the mindset of whoever was organising that. So, we're looking for a shift in that, and that's a rare thing now, but it does happen. That was 2017, That wasn't 1986, that was 2017. So we're looking for this massive shift, and I suppose this is looking to accelerate that as quickly as we can. And I think it's fantastic.
That's madness. You're a Cork legend. You've got 18 All-Ireland medals. That is madness, and it is terrible that this happens, because it's obviously not the 12-year-old kids who are deciding it.
No.
So you have to point it out sometimes. And actually, most people are willing. I mean, you've all seen that. Sometimes if you point it out, most people will go, "Geez, I never even saw it. Didn't even see it. Didn't even recognise it. Never thought about it." That's appalling.
I think it's a massive culture shift. I mean, it's funny even even now with the success with the women's team, I was out the other evening, and two lads asked me, when are you going to do the men's job? You know, and I looked at them and like, what? We just want a silver medal in the World Cup. I want to be with these for the next 6, 8, 10 years if I can, because this is the team that I feel that can go to the next level. And it is a culture shift. It is a mindset that we need to change, and us men can do a huge job of it. We need to take it on board and realise, you know, the impact that we need to have on these young women coming through. I mean, I have a young girl myself, and I want to obviously encourage her to get involved in sport. And the first thing she said to me when I came back from the World Cup was, "Daddy, I want to be a hockey player." And you know, that shouldn't mean as much as it meant to me, but it's amazing that these girls have impacted in young girls' lives, and that's what we want to.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the if you can't see it, you can't be it, because like it's your privilege and your bias that, again, Sarah was talking about earlier on, that you have to chisel away from. I had no shortage of role models. You know, I could have looked up to Paul McGrath or Maradona or Jimmy Barry Murphy or DJ Carey or whoever it was, but watching games with my daughter, she's like, why are they all men? Like, and it tends to always be, apart from obviously TG Carr showing stuff, and latterly the Camogi's been on RT as well. But that's why the role models actually matter, is so that the kids can go, I can see this, I can actually do that.
You're spot on. I mean, as a young man growing up, you see so many people so many men in the media, so many people you can look up to, but it's not the case with women. As you say, 50% of the population. We need to get our act together.
I remember the first time I walked into Cork senior ladies football dressing room. I knew nobody apart from my club mates. Maybe if you played against them in the club championship, but if they weren't a senior team, I didn't know who they were, because I'd never seen a ladies football match. I'd never read an article in the paper about a ladies football match. I knew nothing about the Cork ladies football team. The Cork Camogie team, I'd been to watch them. I knew who they were, and it was all like, it was my dream to play on the Cork Camogie team because they had been in Croke Park. I'd seen them play.
Sarah, talk to me lastly about that leadership issue. We'll open it up to questions from the crowd in a moment, but you mentioned leadership is an issue that you think we need to focus on. I mean, generally in Irish life, we could do with improving our leadership skills, but what specifically in terms of the 20 by 20 campaign can be done practically?
I mean, we have, as I said, diversity is much wider than women and men, but since we have 50% of, in this country, of our population or more, Peter Smith would be able to give me the exact number, are women. That's not reflected in our society, and so the good place to start is at the decision making, at the table, where decisions are made that influence a whole area of whether it's sport or whether it's art or whatever it is, that will ultimately, it will impact on the conversations that happen and the decisions that are made, and the people who are speaking and handing out medals and everything else.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's about checking your privilege. Like, we at Off the Ball have not been as good as we should have been, and have not been thought leaders in this area over the last decade and a half that we've been in existence. And that's why when Along Came a Spider came to us, we were like, yeah, we definitely, desperately want and need to be involved for all sorts of reasons, to improve our decision making, to check our privileges, to open up a new market. The fact is that there are a bunch of people who don't have access to the sports coverage that reflects their lives, but if you create that, then all of a sudden the audience grows. It's a fairly simple, rudimentary thing. It's exactly the point you're making about the everybody owning a leg of the horse. It's suddenly a new market has opened up to the racing community, and it's economics 101 at a base level, beyond the fact that it makes you a better human being, I think.
Guys, thanks for an inspiring morning of conversation all around. Specifically, Graham, I want to know what you think. We've talked a lot about role models and kind of the responsibility role models have, but what do you think the responsibility is on men who are involved in women's sport, and where do you see that going?
I love watching women's sport. I really thoroughly enjoy watching it. I mean, you even look at the GEA final this year, I think was probably the best football game of the year. So I think it's just caring about it, continue to promote it. Yeah, and that's the approach we'll be taking.
Hi, I'm Sinead from the Journal. This is kind of a question, but probably mostly for Graham and Rena, because we've talked a lot about putting women in the media and telling their stories, but in the men's game, that's actually going the opposite way, where coaches are kind of trying to keep their players out of the media. We see it mostly probably, say, with the Dublin football team, the Tyrone football team, the rugby team. So is that a challenge to people who are playing, or Graham, when you have your players, is that going to be a challenge in the next couple of years, that you're actually trying to pull people too many ways?
No, well, for me, I would encourage it all the time. I think our girls do a fantastic job in the public, and I think they inspire young girls to get involved in sport. So for me, I'll continue to encourage it. I love watching them in the public eye. I think they handle themselves and present themselves incredibly well, and I think a lot of male sports stars can learn a lot off them and how they present themselves. There's something raw about them and honest about them and how they speak in the public eye. So, no, I'm not going to be one of these coaches now who's going to pull my players in the public eye. I quite encourage it, because I also think it develops you as a person and puts you a little bit outside your comfort zone. Is something you don't normally do. We're sports people and that's what they do. But actually, to ask them to speak in the public eye and be that role model is very, very important to us.
From a personal point of view, when I was playing, I probably didn't really like doing the interviews and stuff like that. And I remember at one stage thinking, if only I was Stephen Cluxton, I could just say no to everybody. But I suppose, as a female, I did feel a responsibility that when media did come our way, I remember you phoning at me after the Camogie final last year, and I was like, I really don't. But we do have a responsibility. We do have a responsibility. That's, I know certain men's teams are taking that decision, but for females, I think it's really important to get female stories out there, and we really need to sell ourselves. And if the media are getting on board with us, we need to get on board with them, in partnership with them. And I think media coverage needs to improve, and we need to cooperate with that. And the more we can do that, the better.
So that's it. Thanks very much. We're going to play out with this to
Colours in our flag.
to set you off in the right mood for today. Thanks very much, and congratulations to everybody involved.